Hello everyone, welcome back to Nagash, which is a channel dedicated to Age of Sigmar. In today's video, we're going to be looking at the Nighthaunt faction of the Death Grand Alliance. Nighthaunt hosts rush up from the realm of death to visit their revenge upon the living. Tormented spirits howl through the air, while scythe-wielding riders and ghostly war machines lead the charge. Each spectral army of shrieking horrors leave naught but withered corpses in its wake. There are depths of the realm of Shaiish that even the dead have learnt to fear. Gateways to the underworld, these places weep malignant spirits into the mortal realms. And from these cursed ethereal hordes emerge the Nighthaunt armies. Like an ill wind that blows up from the freezing bowels of creation, the Nighthaunt spirits truly are the damned, robbed of not just life but also their physical forms. They are ghosts and spectres that have by guile, treachery or outright evil managed to escape from their underworlds. Sustained by a famishnous hatred for the living, they fight to send fresh souls screaming down into the pits from whence they have emerged, taking cruel pleasure in knowing the torments that await their victims within. In the black heart of the Nighthaunt host can be seen the flickering outline of immense creatures and hateful eyes alight with supernatural rage. As the ghostly army howls down upon a battlefield, damned spirits break away from the storm and the horror of the Nighthaunt host makes itself known. From this boiling darkness come the Cairn Wraiths, instinctive killers whose only joy comes from carving the souls of the living from their bodies. Cairn Wraiths are truly instruments of death, wrapped in cloaks of shadow and wielding wickedly curved scythes. As mortals, they were mass murderers or pitiless executioners, the numbers of their victims too great to count. Stripped of what little humanity they once had, the Wraiths return to the mortal realms, eager only to increase their tallies of kills. Then there are the Tomb Banshees, the slighted and the betrayed. They are shards of revenge and retribution. For countless lifetimes, these fell spirits have dwelt upon the dark deed that robbed them of vitality, love, or contentment, becoming bitter and hate-filled. Words cannot express the loss and pain that burns in their hearts. And of all the Nighthaunt spirits, their cries are the most soul-rendingly terrifying. A single piercing scream from a Tomb Banshee is enough to freeze the life from even the bravest warrior. Among the more martial of the Nighthaunt spirits are the Hexwraiths and Black Coaches. Upon ghostly steeds, the Hexwraiths ride right through their foes, turning blood to ice and snatching souls from screaming warriors. Once knights both proud and cruel, they relive their glory by visiting pain and death upon the races of the realms. No less horrific are the Black Coaches, funerary chariots. They are the result of a soul-blight vampire seeking entrance into the Nether Kingdoms, turned away at the underworld's gates. The creature's spirit is returned to the land of the living, caged inside its coffin. Driven by the fury of the vampire's spirit, the coach clatters across the battlefield, growing stronger as it harvests souls. Within the spectral prison, the vampire spirit strives to escape, but is forever forced to serve in the Nighthaunt's army. Choking the air above the Nighthaunt hosts are the most numerous of its warriors, the spirit hosts. These are the souls of the damned, stripped of body and identity, and they scream endlessly for the life that they have lost. They know only hate and jealous rage directed at the living. Without the strength of will to separate themselves from their ghostly kin, they become roiling clouds of ethereal energy, filled with howling faces and grasping ghostly claws. In their countless thousands, they roll across the battlefields, heralding the arrival of the Nighthaunt hosts and the horrors that follow. Now that you have a basic understanding of Nighthaunt as a whole, we're now going to look at the individual units, starting with the spirit hosts. On the field of battle, these vengeful apparitions cluster together into hosts that drift slowly towards their warm-blooded victims with a terrible inevitability. Even a cannonball strike will not damage a spirit host, for they exist only partially in the realms of the living. However, their twilight state does not render these spirits harmless. They can claw at a mortal's flesh with long, taloned hands, stopping the victim's beating heart with nothing more than just a touch. Okay, now let's see what they're like in game. Spirit hosts. They are battle line for Nighthaunt and other units for different death armies. They cost 120 points for a unit of 3. Okay, let's have a look at their stats. They have a 6-inch movement, they have a 4+ save, they have bravery 10, and they have 3 wounds. Their melee weapons. They have 1. Spectral claws and daggers. Range 1, 6 attacks, 5 to hit, 4 to wound, no rend, 1 damage. Okay, so we'll look at the wheel stat first. So movement of 6 is nice, is a lot faster compared to other death units. 4+ save, nothing to sniff at. Bravery 10, standard for death, but again, it's a lot better than other armies, so never turn it down. And then 3 wounds a model is nice. Their attack, it looks pretty weak to start. The best thing about it, it appears to have 6 attacks. It's a 5 to hit, which is probably the worst thing about it. Well, it is the worst thing. It's a 4+ to wound, no rend, and 1 damage, but there's an ability that will make this attack shine. Okay, so let's have a look at the description. A unit of spirit hosts has 3 or more models. The spirits rend the souls of mortals with their spectral claws and daggers. Okay, it can fly, which is very nice. It makes the 6-inch movement just a little bit further, so you can fly over walls, you can fly over an enemy's chaff line, as it's called, or basically their basic infantry line. You can fly over that to get to all their heroes and wizards and all that sort of thing behind, so being able to fly is very nice. Okay, their abilities. Ethereal. Now this is something we're going to see a lot with a Nighthaunt army, because most units have it. Now, it ignores the weapon's rend when making save rolls for spirit host. Now this means the spirit host, and like most units in the Nighthaunt, they have a 4+ save, and as they cannot take any rend, it will always continuously be a 4+ save, unless you stick a Mystic Shield on them as well, making it a 3-up save and non-rendable. If they're in cover as well with a Mystic Shield, highly unlikely scenario, but if you manage to get that done, they have a 2-up save and they cannot take any rend whatsoever, which makes the Nighthaunt incredibly more durable compared to many other armies out there, and it can make their lack of numbers not so much as a disadvantage as you would first have thought. So Ethereal, that's one of their best abilities out there. Okay, their next ability, Frightful Touch. If the hit roll for an attack made by a spirit host is 6 or more, the spirit's Frightful Touch steals the victim's beating heart, immediately inflicting 1 mortal wound instead of its normal damage. So this goes back to what I was saying about their attacks looking not good to start with, but they'll have ability to save it. Now this is their ability. So they've got 6 attacks. Yes, they are still only hitting on 5s, but if they get a 6 to hit, it's a mortal wound, which is great, especially in Age of Sigmar, because mortal wounds are what some people refer to them as the way to be able to delete enemy units. Which is true. If you can chuck a bucket load of mortal wounds at the enemy, there's very little they can do about it. Most units can't save against it. So each one of these is making 6 attacks. So if you've got a unit of 3, that's 18 attacks. Now, the average of getting 6s out of 18 dice is only 3. But if you've played Warhammer, you should know by now that the law of averages has no part in the game whatsoever. Usually in a bad way, but sometimes luck does play around, and if you get lucky with these guys, you are going to absolutely destroy enemy units. So yes, this is the only other ability they have, but it really helps and saves this unit. So Ethereal, so they're pretty durable, and Frightful Touch, so they can be very killy. Remember, you can get a +1 to hit for this unit if they sacrifice to a damn terrain feature, which is one of the terrain special rules in Age of Sigmar. We'll go into terrain and all the effects it has on the battle in another video, but there is ways out there to make this unit +1 to hit, so they can now do mortal wounds on a 5 or more. Admittedly, this is all situational, but if you manage to put all these parts into place, it can make this unit really devastating. Okay, so now it moves on to the generic magic section, which just says Death Wizards know the Manifest Spirit spell in addition to any other spells they know. So, Manifest Spirits. Manifest Spirits has a casting value of 5. If successfully cast, you can set up a unit of up to 3 spirit hosts within 18 inches of the caster and more than 9 inches away from the enemy. The unit is added to your army but cannot move in the following movement phase. If the result of the casting was a 10 or more, set up a unit of up to 10 spirit hosts instead. So like I said, very generic being able to summon these, but I don't mean that in a boring or bad way at all, because being able to summon units depending on the situation in the game gives Death a huge advantage over most other armies out there. So being able to summon spirit hosts onto an objective if you want, they can't take any rend. If you manage to be able to put a Mystic Shield on them as well, they've got a 3-up save, like I say, and they won't take any rend, so the enemy, unless they've got mortal wounds, is going to really struggle to deal with them. So that's a spirit host. Like I say, they're 120 points for 3 models, and they are battle line for Nighthaunt, or they just count as other units for different Death armies. Okay, so now we're going to talk about our next unit, being Hexwraiths. Hexwraiths are born in the very depths of the underworld. Their only goal in the afterlife is to hunt down those evil men who have cheated Death, tearing from the underworld and into the material realms. These Hexwraiths ride from one side of a realm to the other to hunt down those that would defy Nagash's wishes. Okay, now let's see what they're like in game. Hexwraiths, they cost 160 points for 5 models. They are battle lined for Nighthaunt and other units for different Death armies, the same that we saw for Spirit Host as well. They have a 12-inch move, they have a 4+ save, bravery 10, 2 wounds. Their weapons, Spectral Scythe, it has a 1-inch range, 2 attacks, force to hit, freeze to wound, -1 rend, 1 damage. Skeletal Steeds, Hooves and Teeth, range 1, 2 attacks, force to hit, 5 to wound, no rend, 1 damage. So let's look at the wheel stat first. So 12-inch movement is very nice. It's twice the speed as the Spirit Hosts. They have a 4+ save, like I was saying when we're talking about the Spirit Hosts. A lot of the units in Nighthaunt have a 4+ save, so again, that's nice as well. Bravery 10, like for most Death units, or every Death unit I believe, Bravery 10 is standard, but of course is always good. 2 wounds to the model, 1 wound less than the Spirit Hosts, as these are battle line as well for Nighthaunt, so we can look at them playing similar roles. So 1 wound less, but there's more in a unit, so it sort of works in different ways. And then their weapons, the first one, like I say, 1-inch range, 2 attacks, force to hit, freeze to wound, -1 rend, 1 damage. Nice amount of attacks, not a bad to hit, a nice what you need to get to wound, only a 3, -1 rend, never turn down any rend, and 1 damage. So yeah, that is a very good standard attack, especially how you make 2 attacks for that. And then the Skeletal Steeds, Hooves and Teeth, so it makes 2 attacks, it's force to hit, 5 to wound, no rend, 1 damage. This is actually the same attack characteristic that we saw for Black Knights. So 2 attacks, yeah, hitting on a 4, good to hit, winning on 5, hard, but a unit of 5 of these models, you'll be making 10 of those attacks, so it's going to make the enemy have to roll some save rolls. So yeah, but that accompanied with the better attack from the rider, the Spectral Scythe, it's just like a nice extra attack. Okay, so description. A unit of Hexwraiths has 5 or more models armed with glowing Spectral Scythes and riding Skeletal Steeds that lash out at the enemy with their hooves and teeth. Okay, Hexwraiths can fly. Now that is very nice. Like we said with Spirit Hosts, they had a movement of 6 inches, what isn't bad, but because they could fly over walls and enemy units, so that's nice. This has a movement of 12, so that's twice the speed as Hexwraiths, and they can still fly. So they are going to be obviously flying across the battlefield, flying over terrain features, flying over enemy units so they can get to the weaker ones behind. So this is very nice. It's a nice ability for something that has such a high movement and is cavalry. Okay, so the Hellwraith. The leader of this unit is a Hellwraith. A Hellwraith makes 3 attacks rather than 2 with its Spectral Scythe. So yeah, making 3 attacks rather than 2. Yeah, it's an extra thing. Why not? Okay, abilities. Ethereal. Ignore the weapon's rend when making save rolls for this unit. So like I was talking about with Spirit Host, we're going to see this a lot. So now you can make a big unit of cavalry here with a 4+ save, not taking any rend, moving very fast, being able to fly. Really can make this unit shine and make it that much more survivable. Okay, so the next ability, Special Hunters. After a unit of Hexwraiths moves in the movement phase, you can pick an enemy unit it moved across, because remember, these can fly over enemy units. Roll a dice for each Hexwraith that passed across it. For each roll of a 6, that unit suffers a mortal wound. So it's an alright ability. It's quite narrative how, as they fly over, they turn their victims' blood to ice. So I like it for that. It's a chance to do mortal wounds, so obviously never, ignore it or think that's terrible, but the chances of you doing mortal wounds are very low, because if you have a unit of 5 of these and they fly over an enemy unit, you're going to be rolling 5 dice. On average, at best, you're going to get 1, but you could easily get none as well. But the bigger unit size you have a unit of 10 of these and they fly over an enemy unit, you've got a good chance of rolling 2 6s, because you'll be rolling 10 dice. Which is 2 more wounds to an enemy unit. You're not even attacking, you're just flying over it. It just happens to be in the way and you're doing mortal wounds to it. So it's a nice ability, just don't think it's, a saviour of anything. But no, it's a nice ability. It's nice to have it rather than not have it. Okay, magic again. So this is just about summoning them like we see for, I think, probably about 90% of all the units I've covered so far. But anyway, we'll look at it. So Death Wizard. So again, if you have the Wizard and Death keyword, you can summon Hexwraiths. So the spell, Summon Hexwraiths, has a casting value of 6. If successfully cast, you can set up a unit of up to 5 Hexwraiths within 18 inches of the caster and 9 inches away from the enemy. The unit is added to your army. It cannot move in the following movement phase. If the casting roll was 11 or more, set up a unit of 10 Hexwraiths instead. So yeah, again, for summoning spells, this is nice. So you only need to get a 6 to cast it. Now, casting your average roll, because you roll 2 dice, of course, and as the scores together, it's going to be a 7 on 2 dice. So 6, it's just under the average. So you're more than likely going to be able to cast a spell. Again, it's a very fast unit, so being able to summon them, of course they're not going to be able to move that turn, but because they're so fast, they should be able to make up for it. And deploying these in your enemy back lines, especially when they've moved their army up and they weren't expecting it, is a nice way to surprise them. As this unit could now take one of the enemy's objectives in their own territory that is poorly defended. So your opponent is now going to have to split his forces away from the main fight to deal with these Hexwraiths, making the main fight more in your favour. So Hexwraiths, like I said, they are battle line for Nighthaunt, and they are other units for different death armies. They're best suited in the Nighthaunt army just because there's more synergy there, but as an all-round unit, they're not bad and they have their uses. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our first hero unit, being the Cairn Wraith. Cairn Wraiths are amongst the most powerful of the undead. Though they lack physical form, their touch drains the life of a mortal. Their very presence fills the air with dread, and most who face them are driven mad with fear long before they are killed. Filled with rage, these vengeful spirits fall upon their enemies, tearing them apart with great sweeps of their ancient magical scythes. In return, those who do stand against them find their pitiful attacks merely pass straight through the Cairn Wraith, making contact with nothing but foul air and tattered robes. It doesn't take long for the Wraiths to punish them for their insolence. Okay, now let's see what they're like in game. Cairn Wraiths, they cost 60 points for one model, as they are a hero. They have a 6-inch movement, they have a 4+ save, they have bravery 10, and they have 4 wounds. Melee weapons, they have 1, the Reaper's Scythe. Range 2, 3 attacks, force to hit, freeze to wound, -1 rend, 2 damage. Okay, so their will stats. 6-inch movement isn't bad, like I've said before, the Spirit Hosts. It's quite fast at death, a 4+ save, like I said as well. Many of the units in Nighthaunt have a 4+ save. Bravery 10, it's the same as all death units, and it's of course nothing to sniff at, but it is a standard for death. And 4 wounds is quite a small amount of wounds for a hero. I don't think there's any heroes in the game with less than that. So 4 wounds, yeah, it's the lowest, but like I said at the start, this model only costs 60 points, so you can't argue. Okay, their weapon only have 1, range 2, which is nice, as they could hide behind a rank of infantry and still be able to attack. They make 3 attacks, hits on a 4, wounds on a 3, -1 rend, and 2 damage. So for a 60 point model, that is nice. Especially how, for 60 points, even if it was only 3 attacks, hits on a 4, wounds on a 3, -1 rend, and only 1 damage, you couldn't really complain. So the fact that it's 2 damage is very nice. So this guy he can't take too much damage. Of course, he's only got 4 wounds. But he can deal his fair share of damage, definitely, in combat. Okay, so the description. A Cairn Wraith is a single model. It attacks with a 2-handed Reaper Scythe that harvests the souls of the enemy with each fell sweep. It can fly like a lot of the Nighthaunt units, like the 2 we've already looked at. It can fly, which is very nice, means it can quickly get around the battlefield. It can retreat from combat if it needs to very easily. If it's surrounded by the enemy, it can fly out of there. Which, because like I said, it only has 4 wounds, so you might need to do things like that. So yeah, that's nice. And then abilities. Reaped like corn. You can reroll failed hit rolls for a Reaper Scythe if it targets a unit with 5 or more models. So, most enemy units out there are going to have 5 or more models. So, being able to reroll failed hit rolls, bear in mind you're hitting on 4s, is very nice, because your 3 attacks now, hitting on 4s with needing 3 to wound, -1 rend, 2 damage, it's much more likely you're going to have to make the enemy make save rolls, and it's always just about making the enemy roll as many dice as possible, and as each one of these is going to be doing 2 damage, is very nice. So if you were to charge this guy onto the edge of a big unit that the enemy has of, let's say, something like 3 guild soldiers, quite a basic unit, if you can just charge him on the very edge of that unit, so very few of them be able to attack him, he'll be making 2 damage each with each of his attacks. He's got a -1 rend, so be making their save not very good at all, and you can reroll failed hit rolls against that unit. So you'll be able to kill a fair amount of them, especially for this guy only costs 60 points. So for that, I still think he is a steal. And confirm that as well, because he's got the ethereal special rule like I've talked about, which I'll say again, ignore the weapon's rend when making save rolls for a Cairn Wraith. So he's got a 4+ save, he's not taking any rend, he might only have 4 wounds, but still, the fact that he doesn't take any rend will save his life quite a few times. And yeah, and he's not got a bad stat line, so that's nice. And this is the first time I'll be talking about this, because this is the first hero I've mentioned that you can summon onto the battlefield, because being able to summon heroes, very, very, very few armies can do this. So again, so if you have a wizard who has the death and wizard keyword, he can summon Cairn Wraiths, and to summon a Cairn Wraith, the casting value is a 5. It's successfully cast. You can set up a Cairn Wraith within 18 inches of the caster and more than 9 inches away from the enemy. The models added to your army cannot move in the following movement phase. Right, okay, so you can summon a hero onto the battlefield now. That is so useful, especially in an objective that requires you to have heroes or monsters, as there is one out there, to capture and hold the objectives. So if you've got your Nighthaunt army or your Death army, and unfortunately you're playing against a very heavy shooting army, and they've managed to snipe off a lot of your 5 wound heroes in the first or second turn, and now you're thinking, how am I going to capture all of these objectives when I've only got like 1 hero left and he's got let's say 4? The odds are against you. So the fact that you can summon this unit onto the board to be able to capture objectives, especially if there's one objective that's abandoned because the enemy thought there's no way you can go over there to capture it because you've got no units nearby, but you do have a Death Wizard within 18 inches of that objective, bam, you can summon one right there, because the casting value is only 5, so you've got more than likely you're going to get it off. If you don't get it off, that's just generally quite unlucky. So, and like I say, he's only 60 points, so it's not hard to keep those points in reserve just for him. I commonly do this in my games, just so I can summon a Cairn Wraith if I need one. Okay, so the first hero for Nighthaunt only costs 60 points, and in my opinion he has a fantastic stat line for how much he costs. Right, let's look at our next unit, the Tomb Banshee. Some Tomb Banshees in life were good and noble, but many others were sorceresses, enchantresses and witches that had plagued the mortal realms over the centuries, who have since died in a horrific and unfulfilling way. The most bitter and restless spirits of these evil-hearted women become Tomb Banshees. They constantly howl in remembrance of pleasures of life that were theirs, and in bitterness for the peace of the grave that they cannot attain. Let's see what these lovely ladies are like in game. So, it's 80 points for one model. They are a hero. So it's 20 points more than the other Nighthaunt hero we just looked at, but we'll look to see why it costs more. So, has a 6-inch movement, 4+ save, bravery 10, and it's got 4 wounds. Now, it does actually have a missile weapon, which is very unusual for Death. We don't usually get shooting, so enjoy this one. It has the Ghostly Howl. It has a range of 10 inches. It has a 1 attack, and then see below. Okay, so let's have a look at that now. So the Ghostly Howl, the otherworldly wail of a Tomb Banshee is enough to freeze the blood in a mortal man's veins. When making a Ghostly Howl attack, pick a target and roll 2 dice and add the scores together. If the total is higher than that unit's bravery, it suffers a number of mortal wounds equal to the difference. So how this works is, you would pick an enemy target within range, so the Ghostly Howl, 10 inches. Then we roll 2 dice, and we compare that result to the enemy's bravery, and if it beats it, the difference is how many mortal wounds it takes. So let's say we pick an enemy unit and we roll 2 dice, and let's say we get a 9, and their bravery is 6. The difference between 9 and 6 is 3, so that enemy unit takes 3 mortal wounds. So this is a very nice way to deal mortal wounds. It's of course dependent on enemy's bravery, so fighting against different armies, it will vary how effective this is, but generally it's very effective. Like even a Stormcast Liberator, what you would think to be very tough, only has bravery 6. So you could potential do 6 mortal wounds to that unit. And then you've got things on the other end of the scale like demons who have bravery 10 or other undead. Now, that's going to be quite hard to do any damage to them at all, because you need to roll 11 or 12 on 2 dice to beat 10. So it's quite hard, but you've got a chance of doing 1 or 2 mortal wounds if you're lucky. But on the other end of the scale, you've got things like the Skaven with bravery 4. Now, bravery 4, this thing can do horrendous stuff to it. You can do a maximum of 8 mortal wounds to that unit, or an average of 3 mortal wounds. So just having like an average of 3 mortal wounds that you can generally do to an enemy unit is lovely, especially from 10 inches away. And because we're not used to shooting attacks in our army, if you're fighting against an enemy's army with low bravery, you can use this to snipe out enemy characters. So that is a very nice missile attack. So let's go back up to the melee weapons. The Chill Dagger has a range of 1, has 1 attack. To hit, it's a 4, to wound, it's a 3, -2 rend, D3 damage. Okay, so it's alright. I mean, it's not as good as the Cairn Wraith we just saw, because that was 3 attacks that could do 2 damage each. This is only 1, and it could do 3 damage, but on average it's going to do 2. It's got 1 more rend than the Cairn Wraith had though, that's -2 rend. I look at this as a Necromancer staff or a Wizard staff. It's the same attack as that, apart from this has an extra rend to it. So, its shooting attack can do a lot of damage. Its Chill Dagger, it can kill things, but I wouldn't rely on it, especially how the damage is very swingy. The nicest thing about it is the -2 rend, because if you go against standard infantry stuff like, you know, like I think I was saying Empire. Well, they're not called Empire soldiers anymore. They're called Free Guild soldiers, of course. Got to remember that. If you fight against those, or if you fight against things like Blood Reavers, stuff like that, Clan Rats, you're going to punch through their armour if they've got any. So D3 damage, it's damage, you know. And like I said, this is only 80 points as hero, so you can't really sniff at that, especially with how nice its shooting attack is. Okay, so now let's look at its description. A Tomb Banshee is a single model. It is equipped with a chill dagger that freezes the heart of its victims with the merest scratch. A Tomb Banshee can also emit a ghostly howl to petrify its enemies. Okay, the Tomb Banshee can fly, so like we've seen with all the other Nighthaunt so far, it can fly. It's got movement of 6 inches, so it's the same, like I said, for the Cairn Wraith and the Spirit Host. 6 inches isn't bad for death, and also you can fly over enemy units, terrain features, and so forth. And like I said, with the Cairn Wraith, you can also use this to get the Tomb Banshee out of trouble if she needs to. Okay, ethereal. It ignores the rend of the enemy's weapon when you make save rolls for the Tomb Banshee. So like we've seen with the other Nighthaunt stuff, it's, again, I don't want to underappreciate how good this ability is, because it means that you've always got a 4-up save no matter what. And as this is a Death army or a Nighthaunt army, and this is a hero, it will always get a 6-up save additionally to its 4-up against wounds and mortal wounds. So it's got a 4-up non-rendable save, and it's also got a 6-up ward save as well. So for a 4-wound model, it's much more survivable than you would think. And then its next ability is the Ghostly Howl, its shooting attack that I've already talked about. So moving on to magic. So it can be summoned like the Cairn Wraith that we've just talked about. It has the same casting value of 5, set up within 18 inches of the caster, 9 inches away from the enemy, can't move that turn, so like we've seen with all summoning. But the nice thing about this one is, of course, it can't move that turn, but you can summon it 9 inches away from the enemy. And its shooting attack is 10 inches, so you can summon it in your movement phase, and then in your shooting phase, it can still attack the enemy. So, that's a very nice ability. So it means the turn you summon it, it still has use. It's still going to be doing the damage from a shooting attack. And to be honest, the Tomb Banshee is mainly there for its shooting attack. So not being able to move, it's not too much of a deal. You don't really want to charge it in anyway unless you have to. So you can summon and shoot in the same turn. So that is the Tomb Banshee. It's 80 points, and I'd say it's 80 points, definitely worth it. I generally keep 80 points in my army reserved for either summoning the Cairn Wraith, like I just mentioned, and the Tomb Banshee either. The Cairn Wraith is there for the extra hero that I need, and he can definitely, you know, punch above his weight in the terms of damage output. And then the Tomb Banshee I summon if I need to have a little bit of shooting, but particularly if the enemy's bravery is very low. It's a great little thing just to pop up, and it's just one quite small model. The enemy thinks it's not going to be very significant unless they fought against one before, and your shooting attack will devastate low bravery armies. It is swingy because it is roll 2 dice, so you could get very mixed results, but if you are lucky, it can do horrendous damage. So that's the Tomb Banshee. I think it's definitely worth considering putting it in your army list, and if you're doing a Nighthaunt army, I wouldn't take one without it. Okay, so now let's look at something a bit bigger in the Nighthaunt army, that being the Black Coaches. Black Coaches are, as their name suggests, coaches that are painted jet black and are driven by servants of the undead, driven forward by a pair of necromancers and a scythe-wielding wraith. These coaches serve the Nighthaunt army by transporting the trapped soul of a vampire anywhere and releasing its devastating energies wherever the Nighthaunt lords wish it. Okay, so now let's have a look to see what it's like in game. The Black Coach has a lot of mixed views about it. Some people think it's good, some people think it's not very good at all. I'm in the impression that I don't really think it's good at all, to be honest. It's okay. I mean, the best thing about it is it only costs 120 points. It's a hero, and it has 7 wounds because, as you probably can tell by the Nighthaunt at the moment, they don't have many wounds, particularly the heroes, the Cairn Wraith and Tomb Banshee only having 4. So the Black Coach having 7 is good for 120 points, but I don't really see what it adds to the army. But nevertheless, we will look into it. Okay, so it has a movement of 10, it has a save of 4, it has bravery 10, and it has 7 wounds. Its melee weapons, the Cairn Wraith Reaper Staff, so this will be the same as what we saw for the Cairn Wraith on foot. So it has 3 attacks, force the hit, freeze the wound, -1 rend, 2 damage. The Nightmare's Hooves and Teeth, so has 4 attacks, force the hit, force the wound, which is nice because a lot of time these horses is a 5 to wound. So force the wound, no rend, and 1 damage. So yeah, the attacks are, well, it's a Cairn Wraith on top of 2 horses essentially. But you know, not bad. Like I said, the Cairn Wraith, for how many points it costs, it's not a bad attack, but the problem is this costs double the points of the Cairn Wraith. And yeah, it's good, it's got 7 wounds, but if you can have 2 Cairn Wraiths for the price of this, that would be 8 wounds in total. Okay, let's look at its description. So, a Black Coach is a single model. It is driven by a Cairn Wraith armed with a massive 2-handed Reaper Scythe and is pulled along by skeletal nightmares that lash out at their foes with their hooves and teeth. Okay, so its abilities. Reach like Horn, so it's the same as the Cairn Wraith one, so you can reroll failed hit rolls for Reaper Scythe if you target a unit of 5 more models, which yes, like I said with the Cairn Wraith, you can like put it on the edge of a unit so not much can attack it, but you can do its 2 damage attacks. That's a good way to use it. With this though, because it's much bigger and its space is probably about 5 times the size of a Cairn Wraith space, so lots of enemies will be able to pile an attack around this thing, so it's going to be getting a lot more attacks. Which also comes, a bigger problem is that it's Nighthaunt, but for some reason, I don't know why, it drives me mental. Bear in mind I don't have a Nighthaunt army. It doesn't have the ethereal ability, so it can take rend. So now that 4-up save, which is okay, but this is one of the biggest things you're going to have in the army, so it's probably going to attract quite a bit of firepower with lots of rend. So it can't ignore rend. So it's a Nighthaunt, so it's a ghost, but it's not a ghost. I don't really know what Games Workshop wants to make of this model. So it's a 4-up save. It will take rend, and for being the bigger hero, when I say the bigger hero, I mean it's the biggest hero Nighthaunt has. You think they would make it a little bit more survivable. So with that, any 4+ save, it's going to struggle. Okay, so with that little discussion over, let's see if the Black Coach can redeem itself with its last ability, the Invocation of Death. In your hero phase, roll a dice for each death wizard from your army within 12 inches of this model. For each roll of a 6, the Black Coach gains a level of power for the rest of the battle. The levels are cumulative and grant the following abilities. Now, Nighthaunt doesn't actually have any wizards, so this ability is only really useful in the Grand Alliance Death Army. However, since the Second General's Handbook, they have put in a change of rule if you are taking a Nighthaunt army to make this ability have a somewhat use. I mean, it's called, the change of the ability is called the Conduit of Ethereal Power. Black Coaches in a Nighthaunt army can draw power from nearby Cairn Wraiths and Tomb Banshees. When a Black Coach is in a Nighthaunt army, uses the Invocation of Death ability, roll 1 dice for each Cairn Wraith or Tomb Banshee within 12 inches of the Black Coach instead for each Death Wizards. Now, yes, this does make the ability better because, unlike before, you've actually got some chance of it doing something. So, let's have a look at it then. Okay, so the first level. the Gleaming Scythes. After the Black Coach makes a charge move, select an enemy unit within 1 inches. That unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. So already, to be fair, that sounds quite good. But bear in mind, if you're taking this in a Death Grand Alliance army, you roll for each Death Wizard, or in a Nighthaunt army, you roll for each Cairn Wraith or Tomb Banshee within 12 inches of it in your hero phase. And if you get a 6, it goes up a level. So you have to roll a 6 first in order to get this first level, which when it charges, pick an enemy unit within 1 inch and it suffers D3 mortal wounds. Which is nice, you know, to be fair. And to get 1/6 for how many Cairn Wraiths and 2 matches you're going to get, you know, you're probably going to get it off. Okay, so that's the first level. The second level is the Unholy Vigour. The Black Coach has a move of 14 inches instead of 10. Yeah, I mean, it's not bad, but it's not good by any stretch of the imagination. Having extra movement, I mean, I'll be the first to say that Age of Sigmar is such a tactical game, and so much of the tactics come down to just your movement. So increasing your movement is good, but you have to roll 2 6s now to be able to get that. And the chances of that happening by the end of the game, there is a chance it will happen. Probably a fairly sized chance, depends on how you play. But there's also a chance it won't happen, and it's only an extra 4-inch movement. Okay, so and then the third level, Witchfire. You can add 1 to hit rolls for the Black Coach. Right, okay, yeah, so now it's hitting on 3s with both its attacks. And with the Reaper Scythe, you can re-roll failed hit rolls if you're going against a unit with 5 more models. So it's got a 3 to hit re-roll and 3s, and I normally would say that's really good, because that is good, you know. It's nothing to sniff at, but the fact is you need to get to the third level to do this. Chances are the Black Coach might be dead by then, because it's only got 7 wounds and it's not ignoring rend. So yeah, if you can get it, it makes this model mildly better. Okay, and then the 4th level, Howling Winds. The Black Coach can fly. See, now the Black Coach can fly on the 4th level, and making the unit fly is generally really good. But because the whole of Nighthaunt can fly anyway, and this can't, it feels like it's a mistake on the War Scroll that they haven't put the fly keyword in it. So the fact is that you've got to get to the 4th level to unlock the fly keyword. It just makes me angry, to be honest. It just annoys me, because this is going to be dead by then. So how good is making it be able to fly going to help me? Right, and then, believe it or not, there is a 5th level, which is the Nimbus of Darkness. The Black Coach can attempt to unbind a spell in each enemy hero phase if it was a wizard. And like I said, in the Nighthaunt army, you don't have wizards, so being able to unbind is a challenge, and this model can, maybe, eventually, if it's still alive, unbind a spell, which, as the pinnacle of this whole sort of advancing through the level business, it almost feels like a joke, because, like I'm saying, to be able to get that, it might be the last turn, you get this, or if you stack loads of Cairn Wraiths and Banshees around this thing to try and get off as many 6s as you can to go up the levels. Realistically, even if you can't have 6 of the other heroes around it, so you can have 5 at most, and getting a 6 out of 5 dice is still quite unlikely, I mean, and so even if you try to stack this to get it off really well, going through the levels, it's just a load of crap, I think, to be honest. I mean, basically how I see this is it's a Nighthaunt unit that doesn't have all the special abilities that the other Nighthaunt has. But there are ways to get those special abilities. You just need to do loads of jumping through hoops and rings and worrying about going through the levels when you should be thinking more about actually what's going on in the game to be able to make this thing into do the same things that other Nighthaunt units can do. So I just feel like this unit actually just needs a rework on its War Scroll, and they have reworked it by saying if you take a Nighthaunt unit, you're not rolling for Death Wizards within range of it, you're rolling for Cairn Wraiths and Tomb Banshees, which does help, but I don't want to write this off completely, but it does feel like you can't polish, you know, a ship. Because I don't mean to be that nasty about this, but you're just better off taking 2 Cairn Wraiths, in my opinion. I mean, it's, you know, going through the levels could be a fun experience, but it's a load of business that's not even worth doing. So the only thing that redeems it is it only costs 120 points, and it's got 7 wounds, and it moves 10 inches, which, you know, it moves fast for a hero, definitely for a death hero, you know, particularly in Nighthaunt, you know, moving 10 inches is very good. Yeah, that's all I really got to say about it. So, you know, forgive me, as it does just sound like I've just written this one off from the start. Of course, this is only my opinions. If you use this in game and you have great luck with it, good on you. And if you do, write it down in the comments below, and I'd love to hear how you've been using it. But so that is the Black Coach. Okay, so on to something a bit more exciting after the disappointingness of the Black Coach. We have the most sinister model that Nighthaunt has at its disposal. That, of course, being the Mourngul. Dreadful tales are told around hooded fires of those lost in the killing cold of a mountain winter, driven by famine and pain to hunt their own companions and former friends for their meat and the warmth of their blood. There is no salvation for these damned souls, for the horrors in which they indulge cannot save them, and they become things neither dead nor alive, condemned to an eternity of empty hunger and terrible isolation. Spite, desperation, and malice force these thrice-damned creatures to linger beyond death, the most insidious and destructive winds of magic coiling about to warp and twist their form into inhuman proportions. Soon they become something neither ghost nor relevant, a Mourngul, a monstrous razor-thin shadow of cold flesh and cracked bone, with a gaping maw of needle teeth and a carnivorous stomach that hangs open like a dreadful wound. Now let's have a look to see what this insidious creature can do in the game. Okay, so it clocks in at 400 points, which is hugely expensive, particularly for Nighthaunt units compared to the rest in their army, but it is worth it in my opinion. And now let's have a look at its stats. So it starts with a 12-inch movement, it has a 3-up save, it has bravery 10, and it has 10 wounds. So it already has the most wounds than any other Nighthaunt unit out there. It has the best save with a 3+ save, bravery 10, as we can come to expect from death units by now, and it has the joint fastest movement with Hexwraiths, but this is a single model, so it's easier to get around the table. Now, its attacks. So the Nightmarish Claws and Fangs. So it has a range 2. It attacks start with 8. It has needs a 3 to hit, and then a 3 to wound, -1 rend, 2 damage. So its attacks, they are good. They are nice. Compared to other monsters for 400 points, they're not as good, but he has got abilities that compensate for his lack of aggressive ability, shall we say. There's still 8 attacks, 3 to hit, 3 to wound, -1 rend, 2 damage. Isn't bad. It'd be quite nice if it was -2 rend, but, you know, can't complain. Now, its description. A Mourngul is a single model, a terrifying inhuman spectre of monstrous size. The Mourngul attacks with its nightmarish claws and fangs in a frenzy hunger for flesh and souls. Fly. A Mourngul can fly. So, like the rest of the Nighthaunt units, apart from the Black Coach, we will not talk about anymore, it can fly. So it's got a 12-inch movement and it's flying, so it's very nice. Movability it has, particularly how the base for it, particularly as a monster, it's tiny, so it can very easily fly in and out of tiny little places where other monsters, especially for the same points, would not be able to get to. Okay, so its abilities. devourer of flesh and souls, the unholy essence of a Mourngul is nourished by the souls of those it devours. If a Mourngul slays any models at the end of that combat phase, it heals D3 wounds that have been allocated to it. So, this is where it starts becoming very survivable, as it has a 3-up save and it heals D3 wounds at the end of a combat phase if it kills any enemy models. And I think by looking at its attacks, you know it has the capability of killing at least one enemy model, shall we say, with its 8 attacks and they each do 2 damage. That's why I think this model is more than capable of killing just 1 or 2 enemies. Okay, its next ability, Ghastly Apparition. Mourngul, a soul-searing horror to look upon. Radiating an aura of supernatural terror, utterly despair and ravenous hunger. Subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made by enemy units while they are within 6 inches of any models with this ability. So this is why a lot of people take this model into their armies, just to make the enemy -1 to hit if they are within 6 inches of this model. Now, it says if you're within 6 inches of any of these models, so it does not stack if you had more than 1, because otherwise that would begin to make just horrible combinations, and if you would be one of the people who did it, you would struggle to get games because no one would actually really like you, unfortunately. But anyway, that was in the past. Now, this is also good because it makes the Mourngul more survivable. So, it's healing D3 wounds at the end of a combat phase if it kills any models. And remember, there are 2 combat phases in 1 battle round. So, it has the chance of healing 2d3 every battle round, which could be, worst case scenario, 2 wounds a battle round, best case scenario, 6 wounds a battle round. So, it can heal, it's got a 3+ save, and enemies within 6 inches of it are -1 to hit. So remember, there'll be -1 to hit it in combat. So it just gets more survivable, and it helps the rest of your army out as well by making that minus the hit aura. And that is arguably its best ability. Okay, its next ability, Haunter of the Dark. Mourngul are spectral creatures made more shadow and icy fog than physical substance. Ignore the attacking weapon's rend characteristic when making a save roll for this model. In addition, roll a dice each time you allocate a wound or mortal wound to this model. On a 5+, the wound is negated. Okay, so it just got even more survivable. So it has a 3+ save, it ignores rend, it furthermore has a 5+ save against wounds and mortal wounds. Remember, if it's within 6 inches of one of your death heroes or a Nighthaunt hero, if it's a Nighthaunt army, it will get a further 6-up save against wounds, mortal wounds. So if you've got all that in place, it's got a 3-up save, not taking any rend. Also, furthermore, has a 5-up save, then a 6-up save. Enemy units within 6 inches of it are -1 to hit, and it also heals D3 wounds if it kills any enemy models at the end of that combat phase. So, yeah, this thing just got really good. This is why people hate to fight it, just because of how survivable it is. I've played with them before, I fought them before when I fought one of them at a tournament once. It starts, obviously it has 10 wounds. I got it all the way down, so I only had 2 wounds left, and then I didn't have anything to attack it back with because it killed it. So in the next 3 turns, it healed all the way back up to 10 wounds again, and it was so frustrating putting all that effort into killing this thing for it just to heal all the way back up again to top. So yeah, that ability, Haunter of the Dark, is so good. It's what makes it so survivable, and that is why on battle plans where you need heroes or behemoths to control it, to control the objective, being able to just plop this on that objective, it's going to make the enemy have such a hard time to kill it. Yes, they can kill this before. If they concentrate so much power on it, I mean, before I've had a Mourngul killed because 3 Thunder Tusks in one combat round, in one shooting phase, did 20 mortal wounds to the Mourngul. And even the Mourngul was going to struggle against mortal wounds like that. So yeah, it did die. But one positive is the enemy spent, well, I say they had to spend all their effort just to kill the thing and not shoot my other heroes that were adding more synergies to the army. So yeah, that ability is so good, and all 3 abilities have been amazing so far. So let's look at the last one. Ravaging Onslaught. So once a Mourngul begins a blood-mad feeding frenzy, there's almost no stopping it. Each time you roll a hit roll of 6+ for a Mourngul, Nightmarish Claws and Fangs, add 1 to the weapon damage characteristic for that attack. Okay, so starts with 8 attacks. When you roll 6s to hit, that specific attack that got a 6 to hit, instead of causing 2 damage, it's going to cause 3 damage. So you want to roll those to wound separately so you don't get them all mixed up, or use different coloured dice. So yeah, that's nice. It's just made this thing more offensive. So like I said earlier, it's a shame it doesn't have a -2 rend, but if you get this off, it's going to do 3 damage a piece, which just made this thing so much more offensively better. Remember, that's on a 6+ to hit, so it can be modified. So if you manage to +1 to this model's hit rolls somehow, it now happens on a 5 to hit. This gets triggered, which is so good. And then there are ways for you to be able to maybe get +2 to its hit rolls if you're lucky. So then it generates on a 4 more. In order to get these pluses to hit, it's a scenery piece where basically you can sacrifice to it and your model will suffer D3 mortal wounds, but you get +1 to hit. So usually it's not worth it. But with the Mourngul, it's got a save against mortal wounds, and if you play right, it will have 2 saves against mortal wounds. So it's worth the risk, and it can heal its wounds back. So a lot of the time you can sacrifice to the scenery piece and you'll get +1 to hit, but you've ignored all the mortal wounds you're taking, so you've lost nothing and you've gained +1. So that's all of its abilities. It is good. I mean, the basic stat line, it's not bad, it's good, it's nice, but when you look and it's 400 points, you feel it could be nicer, to be honest. And then when you get to the abilities, it is nicer, and it makes you realise why this monstrosity cost this much in points. And in a standard 2,000 point match play game, in Death, you are allowed 400 points of allies from a different Death fraction, and some of them can ally with Nighthaunt, and your maximum ally allowance in 2,000 points is 400 points. So the Mourngul being 400 points is perfect to just ally in with your army. And it's not all about it. Like I said, it can help your side in a scenario where you need to control the objective with a monster, because this thing will control it for a long time for you, and making that -1 to hit aura within 6 inches of it will help out the rest of your army, because now your durable Nighthaunt units don't take any rend, have a good 4-up save all around, which I say don't take any rend. Black Coach does take rend, but I've already talked about that, so I'm going to try not to think about that again. But a standard 4-up save, not taking any rend, having a mortal wound save for the range of a hero, and then also making the enemy -1 to hit them, can just make your enemy furious in just frustration, as none of their attacks are doing anything. And if that's the case, it is glorious to behold. Okay, and then magic. So believe it or not, this huge monstrosity can be summoned. So again, Death Wizard, so if your wizard has the Death keyword, it knows the summon Mourngul spell. That spell has a casting value of 10. If successfully cast, you can set up a Mourngul within 18 inches of the caster and more than 9 inches away from the enemy models. That unit is added to your army but cannot move in the following movement phase. So like we've seen before, it can't move 18 inches away maximum from your caster and 9 inches away from the enemy. And it casts on a 10, which is a high casting value. To be fair, unless you've got pluses to your casting, you are doing a big risk trying to summon this bastard onto the battlefield. But there are some magical artifacts out there, and one of them, I believe it's called the Sword of Unholy Power, allows you to automatically summon a summable death unit onto the battlefield automatically, and it cannot be unbind. So what I've done before is I've got a 2,000 point army, I take 1,600 points to the game, and then I leave 400 points in reserve to summon this bastard automatically with the Sword of Unholy Power. Now, if it turns out I don't need to summon this thing and I can summon something else that would help me better, I've got 400 points to play with. But I generally am going to summon this guy because he is so fun to play with, depending on what side of the table you want. And the enemy, again, is just shocked and surprised to find out they've got this huge monstrosity. They're not even for Nighthaunt, it's not even their best unit. Generally in Death, it's deemed of maybe not being the most powerful, but for being known as one of the most annoying and one of the best, I would say. It is worth its points. So that's the Mourngul, the only monster and behemoth for Nighthaunt, but it makes up for the lack of others. Right, so that is all the Nighthaunt units. I was also going to look at the Nighthaunt allegiance abilities, but because this video has already gone on for over an hour, and this is by far the longest video I've done so far, I didn't know if I was to continue, if it would be too long. So please let me know if you think an hour video is good or you prefer it to be 40 minutes at the maximum, because this is the biggest army I've looked at so far. It's already taken an hour just to cover all the lore of the units and their war scrolls and how to use them in the game. So in my next video I'm going to look at the Nighthaunt allegiance abilities. So thank you very much for watching. If you have enjoyed this, please like, subscribe and comment down below and let me know how you feel about Nighthaunt and also the length of this video. So until next time, remember, Nagash is all and all is one in Nagash.